Imagine a world where every leader, every company, every organization inspired us to be our best selves. A world where we wake up every morning excited to go to work, where we feel a deep connection to the products we buy and the brands we support. This isn't just a dream, it's possible, and it all starts with one simple question: why? Welcome to CEO's Library, the 1% bookshelf, your exclusive pass to the most impactful business books that are shaping industries and driving innovation. I'm your host, and today we're diving into a book that has revolutionized the way we think about leadership and business success. We're exploring Simon Sinek's groundbreaking work, Start with Why: How Great Leaders Inspire Everyone to Take Action. This isn't just another business book. It's a manifesto for a new way of thinking, a new way of leading, and a new way of inspiring action. Have you ever wondered why some leaders and organizations seem to have an almost magnetic pull? Why do people line up for hours to buy the latest Apple product? Why did Martin Luther King Jr. inspire millions to march for civil rights? And why do some companies inspire unwavering loyalty from both their employees and customers, while others struggle to differentiate themselves in the market? These are the questions at the heart of Sinek's book, and over the next 20 minutes we're going to unpack his revolutionary ideas and explore how they can transform your approach to leadership and business. Whether you're a seasoned executive, an aspiring entrepreneur, or simply someone who wants to make a bigger impact in your work and life, this episode is going to give you the tools to do just that. So buckle up and get ready to discover the power of why. Let's dive in. Let's start with a story that perfectly illustrates the power of why. It's January 2007 and Steve Jobs takes the stage at the Macworld conference in San Francisco. The audience is buzzing with anticipation. They know Apple is about to announce something big, but they don't know what. Jobs begins his presentation not by talking about a new product, but by saying, "Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone." He doesn't start by describing features or specifications. Instead, he paints a picture of a future where technology seamlessly integrates into our lives, where our devices are not just tools, but extensions of ourselves. This is the essence of what Simon Sinek calls the golden circle. It's a simple but powerful idea that explains why some organizations and leaders are able to inspire where others can't. The golden circle consists of 3 concentric circles: why, how, and what. The what is the outer circle. It represents what a company does or sells. Every company knows what they do. They can describe their products, their services, their industry. The how is the middle circle. It represents how a company does what they do. Many companies have a good grasp on this too. It might be their unique selling proposition, their proprietary process, or what sets them apart from their competitors. But the why is at the center of the circle, and this is where things get interesting. The why is the purpose, cause, or belief that drives everything else. It's the reason your company exists beyond just making money. And here's the kicker: very few companies or individuals can clearly articulate their why. Now here's where it gets really fascinating. Most companies communicate from the outside in. They start with what they do, sometimes talk about how they do it, but rarely address why they do what they do. But inspired companies and leaders, they do the exact opposite. They start with why. Let's go back to Apple for a moment. When Apple communicates, they don't start by saying, "We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one?" No, they start with their why. They might say something like this: "Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Do you see the difference? It's subtle, but it's powerful. When you communicate from the inside out, when you start with why, you're speaking directly to the part of the brain that controls decision-making and behavior. You're not just selling a product, you're inviting people to be part of something bigger than themselves. This is why Apple has such a devoted following. They're not just selling computers or phones, they're selling a belief in challenging the status quo, in thinking differently. And people who share that belief are drawn to Apple like moths to a flame. Now, I want you to pause for a moment and think about your own business or organization. Are you starting with why? Can you articulate why your company exists beyond making money? What's the purpose or cause that drives everything you do? If you're struggling to answer these questions, don't worry. Many leaders and organizations do. But recognizing this is the first step towards transforming your business and your leadership. As we continue through this episode, we're going to explore how you can discover your why and use it to inspire those around you. Let's shift gears for a moment and talk about decision-making. I want you to think back to a time when you made a significant decision, not based on logic or careful analysis, but on a gut feeling. Maybe it was a job offer you accepted even though another position offered more money. Or perhaps it was a business deal you walked away from, even though on paper it looked perfect. I'll share a personal example. A few years ago, I was offered a prestigious position at a well-known company. The salary was excellent, the benefits were top-notch, and it would have been a significant step up in my career. But something didn't feel right. Despite all the logical reasons to take the job, my gut was telling me to pass. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but I listened to that inner voice and turned down the offer. Looking back, it was one of the best decisions I've ever made, as it freed me up to pursue opportunities that were much more aligned with my personal goals and values. Now, you might be wondering what this has to do with Simon Sinek's Start with Why. Well, it turns out there's a biological basis for why starting with why is so powerful, and it's directly related to how we make decisions. Sinek explains that the human brain is actually composed of three major parts that function as separate organs. The neocortex corresponds to the what level of the golden circle. It's responsible for all our rational and analytical thought and language. The middle two sections make up our limbic brains. These correspond to the how and why levels of the golden circle. The limbic brain is responsible for all our feelings like trust and loyalty. It's also responsible for all human behavior and decision-making. Here's the kicker. The limbic brain has no capacity for language. This is why it's so hard for us to explain our gut decisions. When we say something just feels right, it's because the decision was made in our limbic brain, the part that controls decision-making, but not language. This biological reality has profound implications for how we communicate and lead. When we communicate from the outside in, starting with what, we can understand vast amounts of complicated information, but it doesn't drive behavior. Like when we communicate from the inside out, starting with why, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls decision-making, and our language part of the brain helps us rationalize those decisions. This is why Apple's marketing is so effective. When they talk about challenging the status quo and thinking differently, they're speaking directly to our limbic brains. We feel a connection to that message on an emotional level, and then we use the rational part of our brains to justify the decision to buy their products. So as you think about your own leadership and how you communicate with your team or your customers, consider this. Are you providing lots of rational facts and figures, Or are you connecting with people on an emotional level by clearly articulating your why? Remember, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And this applies not just to customers buying products, but to employees buying into your vision, to investors backing your company, to partners choosing to work with you. I encourage you to reflect on your own decision-making processes. How often do you make decisions based on gut feelings? How often do you lead with your why when communicating with others? Understanding this biological reality can transform the way you lead and inspire others. Now that we understand the power of why and its biological basis, let's explore how this concept applies to leadership, particularly inspiring leadership. And there's no better example of this than Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Picture this. It's August 28, 1963. The sun is shining brightly on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Over 250,000 people have gathered, drawn by a hope for change, for equality, for a better America. The crowd is a sea of faces, all turned expectantly towards the Lincoln Memorial, where Dr. King is about to speak. Now, here's a question for you. How did Dr. King manage to attract such a massive crowd? Remember, this was long before the days of social media or even widespread television. He didn't send out 250,000 invitations. There was no email blast or viral marketing campaign. The answer lies in the power of why. Dr. King wasn't the only great orator of his time. He wasn't the only one fighting against racial injustice. He certainly wasn't the only one who suffered in pre-civil rights America. But what set him apart was his ability to clearly articulate his why. When Dr. King took the podium that day, he didn't give a speech about specific laws or policies. He didn't present a detailed 12-point plan for achieving racial equality. Instead, he shared his dream. He painted a vivid picture of a future America where people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. This was Dr. King's why. It wasn't about specific actions or policies. It was about a belief in a better future, a belief in equality and justice. And this powerful why resonated deeply with people, inspiring them to take action. Contrast this with how many leaders communicate today. Too often, leaders focus solely on what needs to be done or how to do it. They present strategic plans, KPIs, and action items. And while these things are important, they don't inspire people to act. They might compel people to comply, but they don't ignite the kind of passion that fuels movements and transforms organizations. Simon Sinek points out that there's a crucial difference between motivation and inspiration. Motivation is external. It's about carrots and sticks, rewards and punishments. But inspiration comes from within. It's about tapping into people's own desires and beliefs. This is why starting with why is so crucial for effective leadership. When you clearly articulate your why, you attract people who believe what you believe. You create a sense of belonging and shared purpose. And this is what transforms a group of individuals into a cohesive team, a company into a movement. But here's where many leaders and organizations falter. Sinek calls it the split. It's what happens when an organization loses sight of its why. Imagine a company that starts with a clear sense of purpose. In the early days, this purpose infuses everything they do. The founders are passionate, and this passion is contagious. Early employees are drawn to the company not just for a paycheck, but because they believe in the mission. But as the company grows and becomes successful, something starts to shift. The focus gradually moves from why to what. Instead of talking about their beliefs and their purpose, they start focusing more on their products, their market share, their profits. The inspired startup becomes just another corporation focused on hitting its quarterly targets. We've seen this happen with countless companies. Think about how different Walmart feels today compared to when Sam Walton was at the helm, passionately pursuing his mission to help people save money and live better. The challenge for leaders is to keep the why alive as organizations grow and evolve. It's about consistently communicating and embodying the purpose that drives everything you do. So I want you to take a moment and reflect on your own leadership. Are you connecting with your team on the level of why? Are you painting a vivid picture of the future you're working towards? Or are you getting bogged down in the day-to-day what and how? Remember, true leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. And one of the most powerful ways to do that is by clearly and consistently communicating your why. Now that we understand the importance of why in leadership, let's explore how this concept can be applied to build a strong, purpose-driven organizational culture. And there's no better example of this than Southwest Airlines. Southwest isn't just another airline, it's a company that has consistently outperformed its competitors, maintained high customer satisfaction, and fostered remarkable employee loyalty. And it all comes down to their clear sense of why. Southwest's purpose isn't to be a low-cost airline, that's a what. Their purpose, their why, is to give people the freedom to fly. This why permeates everything they do, from their operations to their marketing to their hiring practices. Herb Kelleher, the co-founder of Southwest, once said, "We'll hire someone with less experience, less education, and less expertise than someone who has more of those things." Why? Because we can train people on those things, but we can't train them on how to have a good attitude and how to love people. Either they have it or they don't. This is a perfect example of hiring for why. Southwest isn't just looking for people with the right skills. They're looking for people who believe what they believe, who will naturally embody and reinforce their culture. The result? Southwest has one of the lowest employee turnover rates in the airline industry. They've been profitable for 47 consecutive years, a remarkable feat in the volatile airline industry, and they consistently rank high in customer satisfaction surveys. So how can you apply these principles to build a why-centered culture in your own organization? Here are a few practical tips. 1. Clearly articulate your why. Take the time to really dig deep and understand why your organization exists beyond making money. What's the purpose or cause that drives everything you do? 2. Communicate your why consistently. Once you've identified your why, make sure it's front and center in all your communications, both internal and external. 3. Hire for cultural fit. Like Southwest, prioritize attitude and alignment with your why when hiring. Skills can be taught, but belief in your mission is harder to instill. 4. Align your how and what with your why. Ensure that your processes, products and services all clearly support and demonstrate your why. 5. Celebrate behaviors that embody your why. Recognize and reward employees who exemplify your purpose and values. 6. Lead by example. As a leader, you need to embody your why in everything you do. Your actions speak louder than words. Building a why-centered culture isn't something that happens overnight. It requires consistent effort and attention, but the rewards are immense. When your entire organization is aligned around a shared purpose, you create an environment where people are naturally motivated to do their best work. I encourage you to start implementing these ideas in your own organization. Start with clearly articulating your why. Share it with your team. See how it changes the conversations you have and the decisions you make. And remember, in a world where many companies offer similar products or services, your why is what sets you apart. It's what inspires customer loyalty, attracts top talent, and ultimately drives long-term success. As we wrap up our exploration of Simon Sinek's Start with Why, let's recap the key insights we've uncovered. First, we learned about the golden circle and the power of communicating from the inside out. By starting with why, we speak directly to the part of the brain that controls decision-making and behavior. We then delved into the biology of decision-making, understanding how our limbic brain, responsible for our feelings and decisions, responds to the language of why. We explored inspiring leadership through the example of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., seeing how a clearly articulated why can mobilize people and spark movements. Finally, we looked at how to build a culture centered around why, using Southwest Airlines as a shining example of a company that lives and breathes its purpose. The overarching message of Start with Why is clear. In business, in leadership, and in life, purpose is paramount. When we have a clear sense of why we do what we do, we inspire others, make better decisions, and create organizations that stand the test of time. I encourage you to pick up a copy of Start with Why and dive deeper into these transformative ideas. Sinek's clear writing and compelling examples make the concept of purpose-driven leadership accessible and engaging. You'll find the Amazon link to buy the book in the description of this episode. As you read, I encourage you to reflect on your own why. What drives you? What beliefs and values shape your decisions and actions? How can you apply these insights to become a more inspiring leader and build a more purpose-driven organization? Thank you for joining me on this journey through Start with Why. Remember, understanding your why is just the beginning. The real power comes from consistently communicating and embodying it in everything you do. Until next time, this is the CEO's Library, the 1% bookshelf, reminding you that the most influential leaders and successful organizations all start with why. Keep asking yourself, why do I do what I do? And watch how it transforms your leadership and your life.